In this video for section 2.3, we're going to start by defining slope. Slope of a line is through the points x1, y1, and x2, y2. Those are any 2 points on the line. And we calculate the slope by using the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Or we can think about rise over run, where rise is the vertical change. So if we subtract y2 minus y1, we get the length of this line right here. And run is the horizontal change. So if we subtract x2 minus x1, we get the length of this line segment here. And rise over run gives us the slope. So we're going to start with example 1 by finding the slope of the line passing through each pair of points. Now what I like to do when I'm doing slope problems is I like to label my points first. So this is going to be x1, y1, and this is going to be x2 and y2. And I like to write either above or below where I've written out the coordinate pairs. And this helps you make sure that you're plugging the numbers in the right places. So when I calculate the slope, I'm going to plug in 4 for y2, and I'm going to plug in -1 for y1. Now it's important when you're doing this to notice that there's a subtraction sign in the slope formula. So if you're subtracting a negative number, that's going to be minus -1, and that's going to change to plus. For the denominator, I'm going to plug in -2 for x2, and I'm going to plug in -3 for x1. Now again, this is going to be minus -3, and then that's going to change to plus. So 4 plus 1 is 5. -2 plus 3 is 1, so my slope is 5 over 1, which I can simplify to 5. Same thing for b. I'm going to start by labeling x1, y1, and x2, y2. It doesn't matter which I label. I could do x2, y2 here and x1, y1 here. I usually just like to go in order because that's easiest, but it doesn't matter which point you use for which as long as you are consistent. So for this problem, I'm plugging in -2 for y2, I'm plugging in 4 for y1, over 2 for x2, and -3 for x1. So that'll be minus -3, so plus 3. And then I can go through and simplify each of these. -2 minus 4 is -6, and 2 plus 3 is 5. So in this case, I can't simplify this fraction and it doesn't divide evenly into a whole number, so this is just going to be my answer. So next you should look at checkpoint problem number 1. Do these in your notes, check your answers, and then move on with the video. So we have this little chart here that shows the different possibilities for slope and how that affect what the lines look like. If a line has positive slope, it's going to be rising from left to right, and so the slope is going to be a positive number. If a line has a negative slope, the line is going to fall from left to right. And going back to when we talked about increasing and decreasing, positive slope, the line is going to be increasing. Negative slope, the line is going to be decreasing. And zero slope is a horizontal line. So if the slope equals 0, the line is horizontal. If the line is vertical, then the slope is going to be what we call undefined. And the reason that happens is because you get a fraction where you have 0 in the denominator, and we remember that we can't divide by 0, it's not allowed, and so we say that it is undefined or does not exist. So that brings us to slope-intercept form of the equation of a line. Y equals mx plus b. So in the slope-intercept form, we have an equation with y and x. M is going to be the slope and b is going to be the y-intercept. And we can use the slope-intercept form to graph the line. So the y-intercept, we would plot that first on the y-axis, and then we use the slope to find our second point. So going back to our definition of slope, rise over run, the slope can tell us how many we count. So we count up or down for the rise, and we count to the right for the run. Then we connect the 2 points with a line. So for example 4, it says to graph the linear function f of x equals negative 3/2 x plus 2. Now remember when we talked about function notation, f of x is another way of saying y, and so this is y equals mx plus b form. So first we want to identify the y-intercept. So that's the number that's by itself, not multiplied by x. So that's the b. The m is the number in front of x. So y-intercept here is 2. That means I'm going to plot 2 on the y-axis. And then from that point, I'm going to use my slope to find a second point. Now the slope here is negative 3/2. I'm going to put the negative sign on the 3 instead of out front because it's easier when it's on one of the specific numbers. So this is telling me to count down 3 and to the right 2. The easiest way to think of it is that the top number tells you how many to count up or down. If it were positive, you would go up, negative, you go down, and then the bottom number is always counting to the right. And remember, your slope should match what the line looks like. So if my slope is negative, then my line should be a decreasing line, or a line that's going downward as you go from left to right. If my slope is positive, then my line should be increasing or going upward from left to right. So I plot the 2 points, connect them with the line, and that's my answer. So I'm going to show you really quickly on the homework. When you're doing these problems, it's going to look like this. So we talked about how to use the graphing tool earlier when we graph parabolas. We're going to use that same thing again. For these problems, you're going to have to fill in the slope and the y-intercept first. So it's going to ask you to identify those before you can do the graph. So I'm going to answer my slope is negative 4. My y-intercept here is 7. And then once I've answered those correctly, I get the option to click to enlarge graph. Now let me move this up a little bit. This is kind of small, which is why it's not working too well. So when I have the click to enlarge graph tool, the line is this one right next to the arrow in the top row. All I need to do is click on the 2 points that I want to graph, and then it'll put the line in. So my y-intercept here is 7, so I'm going to plot the point there. Then I'm doing negative 4, so that's going to be down 4 and 1 to the right. If the slope is a whole number, then you can think of it as being over 1. And that's my line. So I click on save, and that's my answer. So next you should look at checkpoint problem number 4. Do this in your notes, check your answer, and then move on to the homework.